Hey guys, today we've got another bike check video for you. This is my custom built S&M Dagger. I built this last year as a Flatland Freestyle bike. And before we start going over the components, I did want to take a minute and go over a little bit of background so you've got some perspective of why I chose this frame and the various components. Like many 80s kids, as I got a little bit older, I spent more time riding skateboards than I did bikes. But riding BMX bikes was a huge part of my childhood. And whether that was exploring out in the woods and riding on dirt trails with my buddies, or finding old tree stumps and making jumps out of them, or arranging races with the neighborhood kids, or maybe even just the taste of freedom as we get further and further from our house as we explored across town. My friends and I eventually took an interest in freestyle riding, and we had a lot of fun trying the different tricks that we'd see in the magazines. And I've shown this photo before, but this is me with my buddy in 1985, and he had a custom GT Pro Performer, and I had a crappy Walmart Huffy Sigma bike, but I loved it anyway. And we had lots of fun, like I said, trying the various tricks. Eventually, I ended up getting around a 1987 blue Dyno Detour, and I really loved that bike. But by that time, skateboarding was getting more popular. I never really got that great at the Flatland freestyle stuff. And so I ended up using that bike a little bit more just to get around to the skate spots across town. But looking back on those days and the freestyle bikes just brings back such great nostalgia for me. And while I never really quit skateboarding more than a couple years at a time, when I was off at college, my parents ended up selling that Dyno Detour at a garage sale for probably like 15 bucks, which is a total shame. And yeah, it had been more than like 30 years since I had been on a 20-inch bike, and I really hadn't thought much about doing tricks on a proper freestyle bike in a very long time. And then last year, in April of 2022, BMX Flatland made its return back to the X Games after being absent for like 19 or 20 years. And yeah, I had not paid any attention to what modern guys were doing on modern Flatland bikes, and it totally blew me away seeing the tricks that they were doing and just the complexity of everything. And it really kind of re-sparked my interest. It like flooded me all these nostalgic feelings of being a kid and seeing the tricks in the magazines and watching the freestyle scenes in movies like Rad. And yeah, I was really inspired, and I was like, man, I really want to get a freestyle bike. Plus, I had recently gotten over a really bad case of COVID, and I mean like hospitalization with pneumonia bad, and I was laid up for like a month of like really not doing anything, pretty much bedridden. And yeah, it sucked. And after a couple of months, the doctor was like, you really need to be getting exercise. And so I thought maybe getting that freestyle bike, I could ride it around the front of my house and get a little bit of exercise. And so I did. But what I didn't know at the time was that instead of getting my energy and stamina back a little bit more every week, I ended up feeling worse and worse. And I never got sick again, but I ended up with a weird case of long COVID. And I just got more and more lethargic and had no energy the rest of the year, to the point where I couldn't really ride a bike or go skateboarding and just do much of anything. And so I got this really awesome freestyle bike, and I couldn't ride it, which really sucked. But luckily, earlier this year, sometime around February or so, I started feeling like my old self again. I was getting my energy back, but I was still super out of shape. I gained a whole bunch of weight last year, and I'm still out of shape, but I wasn't feeling so lethargic anymore. And the doctor was like, all right, now it's time for you to really start getting some exercise, get your stamina back up, and lose the weight. And so I stuck to things that I was a little bit more comfortable with, like riding my skateboard and the larger cruiser bikes that I've got. But here we are 6 months later, and I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm ready to give this bike another go. So enough about the background, and here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Sigma. Huffy Sigma shows you just how hot disc wheels can be.
All right, so let's get to the bike check. This is my first custom bike that I've ever built, and also I wanted to keep it as more of a budget build, and so I had a big spreadsheet where I tried to find the best value parts and the best sales and discounts. And at the end of the day, I did pretty well. I'm really happy with this bike, and it's one heck of a bike for the 1,200 bucks. So let's start with the frame here. And if you've watched any of my content in the past, you know that I'm a huge sucker for anything 80s retro and old school stuff. But in this case, I was so inspired by those modern Flatlanders on the X Games that I wanted something more like what they were riding. And there's a ton of options out there. And ultimately, I narrowed it down to this bike, as well as I was looking at the Mathias Dandois model from Haro. And if you're not familiar with Mathias, go find his social media. That guy is amazing. He is so much fun to watch. He's got a fun personality, just a super cool guy. So yeah, I love Mathias, but ultimately I ended up going with this S&M. I love that they're privately owned. I love that the owner, Chris Moeller, is an old school, like, BMX legend from back in the day, and he's still really active in the community. And I love the fact that these frames are handmade out in California, and they've just got really great presence on social media, lots of good content they're pushing out, and it's just really easy to get excited about what they're doing. When I was shopping for this Dagger was the frame that was the best suited for flatland riding. Prior to that, they used to have a bike called the Intracat, and they no longer were making it. However, they've recently started making it exclusively for flatland fuel. But yeah, this is the Dagger. Like I said, it's very similar to the ATF that R.L. Osborne was riding. A couple of differences are that it has a much lower standover height. It's got a lower bottom bracket. The rear end is a little bit more compact, and the head tube is 73.5, a little bit steeper, and that all makes it just a little bit more nimble and compact for the flatland style. This bike, though, it does have a 20.5-inch top tube. I know most dedicated flatlanders these days like a top tube that's more in the 19-inch range, and so this is a little bit bigger than that, but I also thought this could be a hybrid bike that I take up to the skate park or up to the pump track, so I went with something a little bit larger. And of course, it's 4130 chromoly, and I ended up ordering this online. This was one of the last ones I could find, and it was $389 shipped after a coupon code, I believe, and I purchased it from Source BMX.
That's a knife.
Anyway, next up we've got the fork and the handlebars. I ended up deciding I wanted those to be S&M as well, to kind of keep the core of the bike with an S&M vibe. And then everything else, I just went for the cheapest, like biggest discount and cheapest shipping options I could find. But yeah, these are fast pitch forks, S&M fast pitch, and they have a 13mm offset of the axle, where the axle goes compared to the plane of the fork. And so that makes them a little bit more responsive for freestyle. A lot of more normal forks are more in like the 33mm range. And then yeah, I ended up getting these off of Source BMX as well for $161 shipped. And then the handlebars, these are Intracat, S&M Intracat bars. They have a 9.5-inch rise, and these Intracat bars were designed specifically for flatland, and I got these for about, I think it was about $58 shipped from Albies. And I think these are also what R.L. Osborne had on his ATF. I think maybe he had some Odyssey forks on his bike, but yeah, I'm loving how this looks, and it feels really good riding it. For brakes, of course, I wanted Odyssey for those kind of old school vibes. I had Odyssey brakes on my Dyno Detour back in the day, and so these are the Springfield brakes. They're a little bit cheaper than the more popular Evo brakes, but they have a great reputation for having a really good value for the price, and they're very easy to adjust. There's no things to fiddle around with. You just kind of install them and you're good to go. But one thing worth noting is on the front brake up here, the clamp has cracked, and I don't know how much longer it's going to last. And I don't know if that's because I crashed or what, but I'm always very careful not to over tighten things. So I don't think I over torqued it. It just has a weak point there. So I don't know if that's why maybe these are more budget brakes or what, but the brakes themselves are solid and they work really well. Like I said, didn't really require any adjustments. You just install them and they work. So I guess this is a good excuse to replace these with the Diacomp Tech 77s. That's what I really wanted when I built up the bike in the first place, but I couldn't justify spending an extra $50 for those when these were gonna work just fine. But I guess they're not working just fine, or at least this one isn't, so I'll probably go ahead and swap those out. And then the grips up here are Colt, the collaboration they did with Vans. These are without the flanges, and the grip itself is kind of modeled after the waffle sole on the shoes. And I've always been a huge fan of Vans, and so I couldn't resist these, and they were only about 10 bucks. The stem is actually a leftover part from my 26-inch GT Performer customization project. It's the stock stem on that bike, which I ultimately swapped out with a white mallet style stem. And so I wanted to get a white stem for this bike too, but again, being budget conscious, I just decided to go with that part since I had it laying around. All right, moving on to the wheels. It seems like a lot of riders these days prefer free coaster hubs, and that's so that they can roll backwards without also having to pedal backwards. And I found a really good deal on this Fit wheel set. It came with a free coaster hub with a 9-tooth cog, and since S&M owns Fit, it seemed like it'd be a really good fit for the bike. And I ended up getting these for about 202 bucks shipped from Albies. For the tires, I was just looking for some reasonably priced ones. I was interested in the Odyssey tires because of their great reputation, and then I came across a really good deal on these S&M Speedball tires. They're 2.1 inches wide. I really didn't want to go any wider than that, so these seemed like a good fit, and it was $45 shipped for the pair of them from Albies, so 22.5 bucks each seemed like a really great deal, so I pulled the trigger on them. Next up, we've got the seat area. It's got a built-in seat post clamp, so that was a great way to save a few bucks. And then the seat post itself is a S&M Pivotal, just a standard seat post. It really wasn't any more expensive than the competitors, so I figured I'd also keep it in the family. And then the seat itself is also another collaboration with Colt, just like the grips up here with the Vans. And like I said, I love Vans, and it's a checkerboard pattern, and so I just could not pass this up. It's awesome. A couple components that really don't have much to say are the headset and the bottom bracket. They're both from BSD. I got a really good deal on both of them. They were about 12 bucks each. And there's not really much else to say. They do their job and they're decent quality. All right, moving on down to the drivetrain area. We've got Haro baseline cranks and a Haro baseline sprocket. The cranks are 165 millimeter. You want them a little bit shorter in Flatland Freestyle, especially so you don't hit your heel there on the back. And then the sprocket is a 25 tooth. Haro baseline are known to be kind of mid-level, kind of value series. And so they're normally a great price, but I can't remember what the exact price for each was, but combined they were less than $75 shipped to the house, and so it was also another good deal that I just couldn't pass up. And then the chain is a Rant Max at about 11 bucks, not much to say there. Similarly with the pedals, these are Odyssey twisted, they're plastic composite pedals. They work great, no complaints there either. I think that might be it, except for the pegs here in the front and back. And these are Black Ops pegs. I wanted something that was white and plastic and lightweight, and so these fit the bill. They were $48 shipped from eBay. Maybe not as durable if you're wanting to do crazy grinds and stuff at the skate park, but for the Flatland here, I think they're gonna be great. So yeah, I spent a couple of weeks researching this build. I started with the frame first, and then really tried to combine all the different parts from different sources to find the best overall value. I ended up using an Excel spreadsheet with a couple of different tabs in it, trying to different configurations. What if I got the Odyssey tires and the Odyssey fork versus this or that? What if I bought it here and got free shipping, or used the coupon over here? And I really spent a lot of time trying to get it down to $1,200 or less, and I did. So this came, I think it was like $1,204 is how much I have invested in this bike, which seems like a lot, but compared to a lot of the other high-end bikes, this is a really great value, and I think it's gonna last me easily the next 30 years of my life, and I'm really stoked on it.
I wouldn't sell my bike for all the money in the world, not for $100 billion, million, trillion dollars.
And then I built it up in a single afternoon. It was the first time I'd ever built a full bike from scratch. It was a little bit of a learning curve. I was a little nervous about getting the bottom bracket bearings pressed in and dealing with the gyro and stuff, but it was actually really easy. and almost kind of therapeutic. I really enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed building and assembling things, so it was fun. All right, but once the bike was done, it was kind of like the honeymoon was over really quick, because that's about the time that the long COVID really started settling in, and I would go out and ride this thing for 15 or 20 minutes and just be gassed out, just no energy. I'd be sore for a couple of days, and I took a couple of spills, a couple of pretty hard ones, and honestly, it really made me question whether or not I could ever really get back into BMX again at my age. But the cool thing is that passion doesn't really age, and even though my body has its days, my love for BMX is still like it was when I was a little kid back in 1985, and I've been building up my stamina on the 24-inch Monza for a while now, up at the pump track, and I feel like I'm ready to give this one another go. If you're thinking about getting back into an old passion or starting something new, remember it's the heart that counts. And I'd love to hear your stories of overcoming any of your challenges or rediscovering any of your past loves. And then if you've got any tips or advice on a young at heart guy looking to get back into freestyle, or specifically Flatland Freestyle, if you know of any sites or cool videos that I should check out, let me know in the comments below. So thanks for hanging out with me today. Ride safe, enjoy every moment, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, bye-bye.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.